What is your 5-year future self? What does that look like for each area in life? Then from that picture of yourself in 5 years, what do you want to achieve in the next 12 months, right? Write that down and then, okay, cool, 1 year, then what are you going to do in the next 90 days, right? They can become more and more specific and more tangible. So these are things that you do in your clarity day, and you may want to spend in advance of the clarity or even the first hour of your clarity day kind of writing down what you want to do that day. So it requires some intentionality, dare I say. Now you can use this for professional work as well. So if you are, for example, you're a manager in a company, you may want to kind of review your top priorities. Are you working on things that are important to you? What about your strategy for your department, for example? The people, do you have the right people in the right seats? What changes do you have to make in there? Processes and systems, like things that you're doing at work with your team or your department. Is there anything you need to change on your processes? And then reflect on what can I do better? What can I do better interacting with my team, achieving goals, things like that. So you can use this clarity day, not just for personal goals, but also for your professional goals as well. All right, the fourth clarity practice, what I call scheduling weekly strategic time. We're getting closer and closer in time frame now. We did this monthly clarity days, and now we're doing something weekly. And that is, I schedule strategic time twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And I really schedule this. In fact, I schedule everything because if it's not in the calendar, it doesn't get done. It's the way it is. If you think you'll do something, if there's extra time, guess what? There'll never be extra time. One of the things I schedule is strategic time. So most of the week, you're doing what? You're doing emails, you're on phone calls, you're putting out fires, right? That really leaves no time for deep work, for actually moving the company forward, for moving your team forward, or even your personal career forward. And this forces you to focus on those things. So every Tuesday and Thursday morning from 9 to 12, I have strategic time scheduled in my calendar. And again, I put goals of what I want to do in that time. And it's not checking email. I'm not doing phone calls. I'm not recording podcasts. I am literally, there's things that I want to do that are in my personal or professional goals that I want to make progress towards. And I need an uninterrupted 3 hours to do that. Sometimes you need an hour. You can't just do it in 15 minutes. You just got to be dedicated, strategic, deep work time. And that happens during those times. This is really where I do, it's the 80-20 rule, really. In 20% of my time, I actually move myself forward 80%. That progress I make is the time during this time. I also, by the way, schedule everything. So not only do we schedule meetings in that time, but I also, for example, schedule lunch. I have a 90-minute lunch meeting with myself, and during that lunch, I actually work out. Like I don't really love working out in the morning. My body gets I do get up at 6 o'clock in the morning, but my body doesn't really like to do it. I do some of my best thinking in the morning, but not really working out. So I do it at lunch, and then I have a nice lunch, and it kind of resets my day. And this I've found has worked for me as well, and that's in the calendar. And my assistant knows not to schedule any calls or meetings during that time. It's kind of protected time. So I do that with my entire calendar. So if you were to look at my calendar, you'll look, oh my gosh, Michael is busy from basically dusk till dawn, or the other way around, dawn till dusk, you know what I mean? But it's not the case. There's a lot of white space scheduled into my calendar, but it's scheduled so that I maintain that white space. And I use the time in the way that carries me forward. So that's a fourth kind of clarity practice, is scheduling strategic time. The fifth one is a daily morning routine. I've always struggled with my morning routine. I really have. I've tried it for years, and I did some meditating app, or I did this thing, and I just couldn't stick with it. It was boring or whatever. I just couldn't do it until I read the book called The Miracle Morning by Hal Elrod. And I highly recommend that you read that book because it gives you a blueprint for how to conduct a morning routine. He has this thing called SAVERS, an acronym. It stands for silence, affirmation, visualization, exercise, reading, and scribing or journaling. Now, there's a lot of stuff there, but he basically gives you a methodology for conducting, the first 60 minutes of your day. And it doesn't mean that you have to do all of those every single morning. In fact, it depends a lot on what I'm doing. Depends on what's going on right now, and it changes in the seasons. For example, at one point when I was working on my yellow book, I actually wrote early in the morning for 45 minutes. That's the only time I could actually get it done. So I used part of my morning routine to really write. And that was very fulfilling for me as well. And I used to try to exercise in the morning. Like I said, it doesn't work for me. So I axed that from the morning routine, but silence, reading, journaling, for example, is a challenge for me because it's dark at 6 a.m. in the morning, right? I can't see my journal. Well, I can pull out my phone or my laptop, but I don't want to do that. That feels like work to me, right? So journaling, I'm still working on now. I got a little night lamp that I got, for my journal, and that's working pretty good. It's important to reflect on the previous day and what's worked well and why you reacted certain ways. Again, it's becoming aware, self-aware, so that you become more intentional. And so journaling has actually been useful. So I'm still working on this. It's certainly not a perfect morning routine, but I have been very consistent. I would say probably 6 to 7 days a week, I'm doing a miracle morning routine in some form or another. And I highly, highly recommend it because this is really a time where you can center yourself. And this is important. You gain clarity, but you also center yourself. And this is also why, for example, my faith is very important. So you're sitting in silence, you're praying, or you're reading the Bible. Now, why are you doing those things, right? You're doing those things, in my case, well, because it centers you, it gives me a sense of peace before the day comes. But honestly, my faith is a very strong source of energy and power for me. And, knowing that there's a higher power who's looking out for you, when the crap's hitting the fans, you're going through a lot of stress, and you can fall back on your faith, and someone's watching over you, that everything will be all right. It calms me down. It gives me a strong sense of strength almost. Being able to be at peace despite what's going on around you, it's a strength. I used to think a long time ago that, religious people or people of faith or spirituality, it's a sign of weakness. And I no longer believe that. If you can tap into some power that makes you better, stronger, more resilient, then why not do it? Why not pursue your spirituality and develop that further? And certainly a morning routine really goes a long way towards that. So it kind of centers me, gives a sense of peace, allows me to reflect on my goals and what I want as well. So in short, if you feel like you're kind of stuck right now, okay? If you feel like you're kind of drifting, stop drifting. Make that clear, mindful choice to develop an intentional lifestyle, right? So you need to create clarity. In order to need to create clarity, and you do that by following these 5 clarity practices I just outlined. So step number 1 is craft your perfect day. That's what you're working towards. You want to live as much in that perfect day as you can because it makes you happy, right? And then sit down and spend time setting goals. Figure out, what is your 5-year future self? What does that look like for each area in life? Then from that picture of yourself in 5 years, what do you want to achieve in the next 12 months, right? Write that down, and then, okay, cool, 1 year, then what are you going to do in the next 90 days, right? They can become more and more specific and more tangible. So goal setting is number 2. Number 3 is having a monthly clarity day. Now, you can use that clarity to actually do all these things I just talked about, but we never actually spend enough time to really create clarity. So this basically forces you once a month to really sit down. I can assure you, if you do that once a month, it is going to be amazing how much clarity you're going to get from that. And then once you do it monthly, which is really cool, you really want to bring it into the week and the day. So bring in a week is you want to schedule strategic time where you're making progress towards your biggest goals. And those goals could be professional, but they also could be personal goals as well. That is where you really move yourself forward in that scheduled strategic time each week. And then if you haven't done it already, develop that early morning routine. It's so powerful. If you're struggling with that, like I did, definitely read Hal Elrod's book, The Miracle Morning. It'll really be helpful. So there's a lot of stuff here. There's 5 clarity practices. What can you start doing right now? Maybe start with your perfect day. I had maybe, 8 sentences in there? Write that down. Get up early in the morning, just write down, man, what is your ideal perfect day? Write it down. And then see where it goes, right? What's next? Maybe you want to schedule that first clarity day. Because if you schedule that clarity day and it's your calendar, now you can spend that entire day doing goal setting. Very powerful as well. Again, look at the podcast episode 405. In that podcast, in the show notes, there's actually the spreadsheet that I use, the Living Fully Compass that I talk about in there. You can download it. So you're not starting from scratch. So you can go to that episode 405 and download that spreadsheet as well. And then in the process, okay, answer this question. How important is financial freedom in that perfect day, in that life that you want to architect, right? Because maybe it's not. For me, it's absolutely critical because I can't live the life I want to live without financial freedom. There's things that I want to do that may or may not generate revenue. I may want to take some time off. For me, it's an absolute critical. I can't imagine life without that. And maybe for you, it's different. And if it's not different, then really focus on achieving that financial freedom. That's really what we're all about. We want to help you become financially free with real estate, specifically by investing in apartment buildings, because we know you're not going to be able to do it with single family house investing. It can only be done with apartments, and we want to help you do that. And it doesn't require experience and a bunch of money in the bank, because we're going to raise money. You're going to build a team around you, and it's actually so much easier than it thinks. In fact, it's about the same amount of work as you flipping a house. It's just that you're directing your attention to a different kinds of real estate strategy. So answer the question, how important is financial freedom in our life, and what are your goals? What can you do to make progress towards that? So when you follow these 5 clarity practices, you can create better mindful choices.